We've all heard and read many accounts by witnesses reporting that Sasquatch can suddenly disappear. Whatever this ability actually is, it lends support to many diverse interpretations, ranging from the supernatural to the interdimensional to the extraterrestrial to the biblical. Let's see what a careful, granular look at Sasquatch hair may add to our understanding of this remarkable defense mechanism.
This sample was collected in the vicinity of a sighting, and it was a tuft of hair containing a lot of individual hair strands. When you look at it under a microscope, it gets a whole lot weirder. What to me was the most remarkable thing about this tuft of hair is that it contained so many different types of hairs that I was quite astounded by it. Different colors, different textures, different levels of transparency, from completely opaque to almost invisible like glass. And it just struck me as being extremely odd, and I'd like to show it to you. Let's take a look. Now, we're going to be looking at these kind of fast. You see a white one here, and there's a brown one crisscrossing it. There's a semi-transparent brown one. There's another brown. You just have to kind of watch, and you'll see what I'm talking about. As I, moved the hair sample under the microscope, quite a few changes took place. There was translucence to the hair. There's a completely white one. And then others, you see that one's got a white shaft, but it's got some mottling, some brown spots on it. Another white one, another brown one. You just keep watching. You'll see it gets quite remarkable. There's a kind of a clear one. And there's the broken off end to one of them. There's a different one. I wondered why there were so many different types in one hair sample. Look at that. Semi-clear with mottling on it, mottled color. You can see the scales on. You'll see it here in a minute. You'll see scales. This is at the highest power. There's some scales on the sides right there. Another broken shaft. You can see the scales on that one. See, even within the one field of view, there's a lot of different variety. The reason why it seems to me is important is because when you have clear, when you have translucent, there's a clear one. You can see that debris all the way through the shaft. It's going to make the effect of, if you have hair like that on you, of if you turn just slightly, it's going to those clear hair shafts are going to refract light, and they're going to change the way you see. If he just moves just a slight amount, you're going to see a change, and you might actually lose sight, even though you're staring straight at it. See how, with hair like that, you realize the camo potential. Now let's just stop it right there. That shaft of hair is so transparent that it actually refracts the light coming up through the microscope and bends it, and you get an intense lens flare like a magnifying glass would do. Just an incredible thing to see in a shaft of hair. I guess what I'm saying is that if you were wearing, if you had that hair on your body, and someone was looking at you from a distance, and you had hair capable of refracting light, and some of it is semi-translucent, and some of it's brown, some of it's black, some of it's white, some of it's completely clear, it would be like the ultimate camo. If you were to just stare straight at it, and just something as simple as an angle change or a little bit of difference in the light, how it struck, it's gonna change everything, and it could possibly just be like disappear right in front of your eyes, even though it's still there, and even though you're still looking at it. What I predict by looking at this hair is that you'll see reflection and refraction, and something along the nature of some fiber optic type of qualities to it, where light will travel down the hair shaft and come out in another place. And so I went back to the Patterson film to see if I could see that in the film. As she gets very close to the tree, the back begins to flood with light, reflecting off the tree. Watch what happens as she comes out the other side. And she's no longer in that angle of light. You'll see. Very different. She lost that. She lost that really bright reflected pattern on her back. Now this is when she's walking in the distance, and this is just 2 frames. Watch the light on her heel right here. You see it's bright. When the sunshine hit and the angle got right, the light flooded up the hairs on the leg. If Bigfoot has hair like that, and you weren't able to watch it walk up to this tree, and you just came into the scene and it was just standing there by that tree, you might think it was part of the tree.
And one of our members found a blind that was set up behind a campground, and there were hairs in it. She collected the samples, and I took them home and put them under my micro cam, and I'd never seen anything like these hairs. They were 3 to 5 times the diameter of human hair, and they had what was obviously a really high mineral content, as well as algae growth on the hair itself. Follicles, we had the tapered tip. In the initial examination of this hair and the hair samples that we subsequently got, we started to find clear hairs in the sample. Like you would have a spectrum of different colors and translucence, right? You have the real dark ones, which really don't appear to be translucent, even though under a much more powerful microscope, there's a translucence to them. And where we were finding the hairs in Central Florida was where we were having all these experiences. We would hear something in the same exact bushes, and then 2 or 3 hours later, when the sun came up, we would go into the exact spot we heard the action, and there would be these hairs snagged in the trees, the low-hanging branches, 6 to 8, sometimes 9 feet off the ground. And so we really started focusing on collecting physical evidence, and that's when the samples really, started to come. This is a good cross section. If you look at the top left-hand side of that image, you can see an amber colored hair. And then behind that, you can see a crystal clear, not translucent, crystal clear hair. At the bottom across that, you can see the black hair. But we're finding hairs that do not match anything known to science except a polar bear. They're clear, and they're in these samples with multicolored hairs. So, when we started to find these clear hairs, there's another really good picture of it. You can see some of the amber translucent ones in the upper right-hand corner. Mm-hmm. And here I am with an LED under my micro cam, and I'm glassing off, trying to see how the light interacts, taking that light on the outside of the micro cam and seeing how the hair interacts with light, because this is exactly what affects our visual perception. And in this video that we're taking a look at now, I put a fresh, brand new ficus leaf on the examination table. And so that green background is a ficus leaf. In varying degrees of light, that hair can vanish, man, and turn green. In direct sunlight, it can gloss off and look like glass. It can look like chrome. And then as the light pulls off of it, it turns green. It basically allows the background to come through. So if an individual with this hair is standing in the forest and you capture them on film, depending on the light source and really in between frames, he can change colors on you. And this is curiously what you see in our footage. You see, I've actually had individuals on various websites go, Sasquatch aren't green, there's no such thing. I agree, Sasquatch they're not green, but light aberration is very real, as you can see.
Now this is one of the dens that stretches way back. Now I haven't been all the way back, but from here I caught a shot of Goliath.
Now to me this clearly illustrates why we say they're human. There's very little that's ape about this thing at all. Now it looks kind of caveman. His face is green. Now his face isn't actually green. His skin is gray. But I don't know if they have some kind of oil on their skin or whatever, but when they get up next to something green or black or brown, their face reflects that color in the sun. And to me, that's just perfect camouflage. And it's also what makes these things so hard to see, even when you're right there among them. You know, they're just, you can't see them. That and the fact that they just don't move.
The position I take on the Sasquatch and the hair is that I believe it diffuses light. I don't think there's anything reflective about it.
From seeing these individuals with my own two eyes and watching the diffusion process, and I can tell you that when they're standing in front of you, you'll see something, but it appears to be an aberration of light and shifting colors. And when you take the symmetry of the face and the varying angles of forest canopy light that may be coming through with leaves moving over their heads, and then you've got an adjacent bush that is being diffused off of, the sunlight's diffusing off of, and then picking up tones. With that moving light, you absolutely cannot tell what you're staring at. And like I said, I've seen them within 30 feet, and I'm staring at it. And then all of a sudden the wind stops, and there's a Bigfoot standing there. What happened during the other 30 seconds? I was still staring at the individual. It just did not appear to be a solid object. It appeared to be a moving, it looked like a squid that was standing there, or a cuttlefish that was standing. Just the colors, it didn't appear to be solid. It appeared to be living color, waving and changing, glossing off the forehead, the brow ridge. The one thing that I did recognize for about 4 seconds was at one point, his eyes became visible to me. I suddenly recognized that there were eyes staring at me. And right then was when I noticed that he was looking me up and down. He was looking at my shoes. He was looking at my pants. He was looking at my shirt. And then when he looked me in the eye, complete recognition hit. And that's when I went like this and said, "Oh my God," you know? And he was like, "Oh shit." And he turned, and like, it was like instantaneous. And it was interesting because in looking back at the situation, evidence of the bent knees was there. This individual appeared to be floating as he was standing there. He had this circular motion that was so subtle, where he was doing this, and he kept rising and going in a circle. It was really strange, man. But the fluid motion when he moved off. But the hair perfectly demonstrates on a minuscule level the amount of diffusion and how the light will interact on their bodies with whatever's behind them and whatever's in front of them, whatever's over them. And so if you take that hair in that little sample and you put 10 million of them in a big clump, and you put that achromatic skin, that gray colored skin or that black colored skin, or the varying shades within, they blend in so perfectly. They can be in dead brush and appear to be the exact color of the deadfall, whatever color it is, provided there's a lot of light. What we do notice is this: invariably, whatever color they may be, outside of the aberration phenomenon, when there's less light, they appear to be green.
But yeah, you can see that when you pull that light away, it looks green. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's not just the clear hairs. From different angles, the black hairs turn completely green, man. And not only that, but as they're turning green, the surface on these hairs And I think this has to do with the mineral deposits in the hairs and also the oil deposits. Danielle, I think you may have a shot, or Kerry, one of you guys, I sent shots of a follicle.
Yeah.
And you can see the follicle from these hairs. And there's oil deposits all over it from where it came out at the root. There it is right there.
There it is.
You can even see a piece of debris attached to the hair. And the clear difference between the debris itself on the upper right-hand corner and the oil and the follicle root. It makes perfect sense. We're looking at something that, honestly, in 5 years of research, the only conclusion I can come to is that they came from here and they belong here. They belong here. And the degree with which they're embedded in the environment, most human beings just can't comprehend.
Interestingly, it turns out that oil has been noted by many in association with Sasquatch. Here's a clip from Finding Bigfoot, for instance.
One night, I'm awoken by this horrible growl. It was here. It was on the porch. The next day, right here was a huge handprint. The thumb was way long. The fingers were huge and long. You could see then little impressions of the hair, and it was greasy, oily. It was nasty.
Back in 2008, I was lucky enough to obtain thermal footage of a Sasquatch spying on us from behind a woodpile. Three years later, I returned to this East Texas site, sleeping in my rental car at the edge of the backyard, about 25 feet from the earlier woodpile. On my last night, though I was unaware of it at the time, my audio recorder captured sounds of the car being bounced up and down at 2:46 a.m. The next morning, I discovered clear fingerprints on the back window. They are smaller than my own and of a different, pointier shape. And they show edge striations that do not match prints of our own species. Even after a 70-mile drive to the airport in Dallas, they looked exactly the same, the dirt or dust having not blown off at all. I concluded that these imprints must have contained a good deal of oil as well. Just this past July, 2019, Ohio researcher SnowWhiteBigfoot found smudges and prints on her car windows one morning. The smudges are so thick with oil that they look like finger painting, and the prints contain much more detail, blatantly visible without any forensic dusting procedure whatsoever, than would be expected in Homo sapiens prints on this same glass surface. The presence of oil makes possible an exquisite degree of faithful representation. The level of detail that SnowWhiteBigfoot was privileged to find and document in these prints is really breathtaking. Oil is an interesting substance when it comes to its effect on light. Objects can seem to disappear under its influence. Of course, the example shown here is of a thick layer of oil, but there is also something called thin film interference brought about by oil.
Here I have a diagram showing a thin film, such as a film of oil, on top of a puddle of water, and white light comes down and goes off in such a way that one beam reflects from the top surface, another beam goes through that thin film and reflects from the bottom surface of that thin film and goes back up and meets this top beam. Those two beams will be either in phase or out of phase depending upon four variables: the thickness of the film, the wavelength of light, the index of refraction of the film, and the angle at which you observe this. So the greater the angle, the greater the effective thickness of the thin film, which would be, in this case, oil. And I'm going to drop some oil onto that puddle of water, and we're going to watch what happens. All the colors of the rainbow show up in that thin film interference pattern, oil on the surface of water.
This phenomenon causes major disruption of light rays through refraction and diffusion. Many witnesses to apparent Sasquatch cloaking or disappearance cite the film Predator as the best parallel to what they saw. The way this anti-hero pulled off his optical trick was through a mastery of light, taking on the surrounding visual information to establish his own realm of partial invisibility.